Morning, everyone. My name is Niall Kitson, editor of TechCentral.ie, and welcome to the latest in our TechFire series of webinars delivered today in association with IP Telecom. The pandemic has forced businesses to embrace hybrid working, and that has brought with it a range of challenges, from promoting employee collaboration to ensuring continuity of service for customers. New working styles basically need the right infrastructure to support them. And this brings us to our burning question this morning: should you put telecoms at the center of your business? This morning, we are joined by Dermot, Network Operations Centre Manager for IP Telecom, and Adrian Ward, IT Support Manager at Portwest. At registration, you had the chance to submit a question for later in the hour. We are also taking suggestions through the chat function, which will be moderated by our producers, Sean and Julia. So before we get started, we'd like to run the first of 3 polls this morning. And the question that we have for you is, since the great return to work, you have either A, increased your spend on telecom, B, reduced your spend on telecoms, or C, spent about the same amount. Sean, we'll just let that go for a moment. Okay, fairly simple starter if you want to close that off. And what are our results like? So actually quite interesting, 50, 25 and 25. And we'll come back to that result in the Q&A session later on. So now I'd like to welcome Dermot to our conversation. Dermot Frost, of course, NOC Manager at IP Telecom. Dermot joined IP Telecom in December 2019, where his team manages the network, services, servers, databases, and software services. He has more than 20 years experience of running infrastructure, having built a range of IT systems in academia and research, including data repositories, 3D visualization environments, and parallel computing platforms. He has also participated in national and international working groups on digital preservation and data management. Thanks for joining us, Dermot.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess I thought I'd lob a little bit of a grenade at you first thing in the morning and say that over the last few years, we've gone from a situation of everybody being based in an office to it being assumed that we're all going to go back to an office fairly quickly, to do we actually need an office in the first place? In your experience, is this what's happening, or is that maybe a little too forward-looking?
No, I mean, I think that's probably about right in broad strokes of, for certain businesses, they've definitely embraced the hybrid model, or possibly even the fully remote model where they've actually completely abandoned offices. But my personal take on it, and on my experience of where I, in my role, there's nothing that quite beats that, going to the office, having that water cooler moment, having that engagement with the teams, especially if I found when we were working remotely during the pandemic, I would talk to my direct team an awful lot. And then I'd occasionally talk to people in support. And then I'd never talk to sales and marketing because, well, I'd never talk to sales and marketing anyway, because who wants to talk to them? But, there were parts of the business that we just never engaged with. It became very easy to become very siloed. And without that kind of sort of the serendipity sort of side of, just having, while we're boiling the kettle to make a cup of tea, about this, have you talked to that customer? Have you seen this new product or whatever? You miss out on a lot of that stuff. So unless your company has very much set themselves up, I think, for remote and keeping people company-wide engaged, I think we're going to always end up with a situation where there's going to be a headquarters of some sort and people want to get into that. Obviously, communications, whether it's our business of more traditional sort of traditional phones, or online meetings, Zoom, Teams, all the usual things that we got used to over the last couple of years. that helps an awful lot to facilitate this. I mean, if COVID had hit in 2000 or 1990 something, I don't know how a lot of businesses would have survived, because if everybody was locked down, there is no other way to do any work. So we're lucky that, we're never lucky that COVID hit, but we're lucky that at least the technology had advanced far enough to facilitate that. And for a lot of people, it's made their quality of life a lot better. If you're not spending 3 hours stuck in traffic trying to get to an office every day, or you're not, and on the health side, you're not being exposed to all these germs on the bus of people coughing and spluttering at you, then there's definitely upsides to it. But from a business's point of view, we see definitely that people are wanting to give people the benefit of the work from home lifestyle and the things that benefit from it, but they're missing out on that key part. And so they are kind of definitely leaning towards this hybrid, which some people say is the best of both worlds. And some people say it's the worst of both, because you've kind of got the hang on of, oh, well, everybody has to have a desk and everybody has to have all the equipment in the office. And they also need to be set up at home. And then also you've got the proliferation of devices and connectivity and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Personally, I like going to the office also because I like being able to close my laptop and say I'm done for the day and then go home and play with the kids. But it definitely has a certain benefit to the notion of the office isn't the be all and end all anymore. Definitely not.
Yeah, I think that quality of life argument has certainly been advanced and held up as sort of the final proof of concept, if you will. There is, however, the rules of the game have also changed in that if you happen to be a startup or company moving into Ireland for the first time, it is a different setting, a different kind of dynamic. Are you finding that companies that are arriving in Ireland for the first time have been like, do you know what, we don't have silos to begin with, so let's just go with what we can and just keep things stripped down?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, I think it comes with scale. If you are a small, agile organization, a staff of 20 or 30, it's very easy to have everybody in a single Slack channel or whatever communications tools you're using, and everybody can see everything. I imagine, never having worked in a 20,000 person organization, I imagine though that's quite difficult, and therefore you get these sort of separation of groups into silos, because there's a scale issue. Certainly customers that we see who are sort of new startup environments, yeah, they're all looking to stay remote as long as possible. And it allows them the ability then to hire everywhere and to let people work from anywhere as well. Obviously, I mean, from a corporate point of view, there are probably tax and all that kind of implication of where your staff are, but from a getting stuff done perspective, it gives you that huge flexibility to have the best people that you can get, and then by having a flexible communications platform, again, whether it's Skype and Zoom and Teams and those, or more traditional telephony, or a combination of both, yeah, it definitely gives you that best of all possible approaches. Very what's his name, Candide and Pangloss sort of view of the world of, in this the best of all possible outcomes from the pandemic, we've got this best of all possible workplaces. But it kind of is that, and we definitely see that with the smaller, more agile new technology companies. But more traditional companies in traditional businesses, they have a very strong need to be in a location, especially, I mean, obviously if they're a sales organization or something, they need to have a shop, they need people to be able to come in and get their stuff. But even if you're a traditional services company, we see that a lot with, say, with sort of financial sort of accountants and people like that, or solicitors, they have to have that physical presence to say, look, let's come in, have a meeting, put all the documents on the table, and the old way of doing business, some industries just aren't set up really to go fully digital, and we have to be able to support all of those types.
That's a really interesting point there you raised about the legal profession, or I suppose professions in general, where signatories and stamps and seals and wet signatures are still so important.
Actually, I mean, just to jump in on that note, actually, it's kind of funny. I mean, we've had this, digital signatures and e-signatures and all this kind of stuff for 20 odd years, and we've had legislation about it. But we still get approached by those sort of professions when they want to move, sort of say, and can you support faxes? Because faxes I mean, I'm looking at faxes and going like, is this 1980s all over again? Get out the rolls of thermal paper. But the fax still has much more weight than a proper cryptographically signed GPG encrypted. They don't accept that, but they will accept a fax. And nowadays, a fax turns into, I have my computer, it turns a PDF into a thing, sends it over the internet, turns it back into a PDF, but somehow that counts as a fax from the profession's point of view, even though there's never been a fax machine involved in the process. So yeah, it's one of those head scratchers. And every so often we have a customer who says, "Yeah, do you have fax?" And we go, "Well, we do, but we'd rather you didn't." And we try and let's say educate them, but some places it just still has that standing.
And a similar situation being with the Minitel, if you remember that in France, still used in banking.
Yeah.
Up until very recently, I suppose not being used by very many people was probably a strength at some point. So, in looking towards industries that don't have a tech focus, how do you sort of deal with problems and go, do you know what, this actually exists already? The technology that you need to solve this particular problem has been lurking away in the background in those sort of 80% of features nobody uses. I imagine there's, an awful lot of very deep conversations happening at the moment.
Yeah, I guess there are to a certain extent, but a lot of people they just want to be able to talk, right? That's the human condition. And a business that doesn't recognize the fact that its customers want to be able to pick up a phone and talk to somebody, whether it's I mean, everybody has a mobile, so the notion of telephony is gone, and we are now into everything's on the internet. Well, no, the billions and billions of iPhones and Androids suggest that telephony is still very much here. And then, so if you're a business and you're providing that, you're providing a service to somebody, you need to have that that phone service available for people to be able to contact you on. And then it's about what can we use that system to do to then further our company. So a lot of companies, they won't be tech companies, but they have a lot of these systems in places. They have things like Salesforce or Zoho or those sort of things for managing their customers. They have ticketing systems like, I don't know, Zendesk or one of those sort of platforms that they don't care about the technology, but they need ways of tracking stuff. And then it's a question of, well, now that we have this telephony system in place, how are we tracking our engagements that come in over the phone? Are we being responsive to our customers' needs? When somebody rings and they don't get an answer, do they get callbacks? If we have a call center, have we got sufficient agents? Can we observe what's going on? And can we provide a better service for our end customers? And so us as the telephony providers, we definitely look at how can we make our clients' lives easier and better, so that then their end clients have a better experience of that company. And a lot of the technology is very straightforward. I mean, most people say don't use 90% of the features. That most customers of ours use the core 10% of picking up the phone, dialing the number, talking to somebody, hanging up. Or the other way, call comes in, might get an IVR saying press 1 for sales, 2 for marketing, and 3 for tech support. But that's as complicated as an awful lot of people go. And for their business, that's all they need. That's all they want. But there are all these other features that are there. And I mean, that's one thing that we're very proud of the platform that we have, that it has that extensibility and flexibility, that if you want to do something clever, if you want in real time to have another system monitoring everything that's going on in your PBX, checking all the calls that are coming in, and then triggering other business processes. Oh, a call came in from Germany. Right. Well, we need to know something about, let's make that agent that's going to answer it be somebody who can speak in German, or it needs to trigger a thing that goes to our warehouse in Germany to say there's a new order coming in, or whatever your business processes are. We can hook all of that sort of logic in, using the different APIs and the technology around WebSockets and all that kind of stuff, to then drive your business from what's happening over the phone. Because we sort of say everything's gone online, and there's definitely an online portion of it, but an awful lot of business, and we see it on a daily basis, that everybody still wants to talk, and everybody still wants to talk during business hours. I mean, if I look at our graph of our number of phone calls, it's reasonably quiet over the night, and then at about 8 o'clock in the morning it shoots right up, and then there's a nice little dip between about 1 and 2 when everybody goes for lunch, and then it's busy in the afternoon, and then by about 5 or half 5 it tails off again, and then we reasonably quiet for the rest of the night. we are humans, we're creatures of habit. We can't help ourselves. We work 9 to 5 and we take an hour off in the middle. But how that then you can respond to your company. You go, well, that's the model. But if I'm servicing customers that are in North America, I need to be able to time shift that a certain direction. If I'm servicing customers in the Middle East and Asia, I need to go the other way. And I guess then you have issues around, and I think Adrian might have this problem as well a bit, where then all of a sudden you say, right, I need a sub office in, Poland, or I need a sub office in India, or I need one in America. But because we've got a cloud-based system, you're not having to install infrastructure to support all of those different people in all those locations. It all comes back to one central point, and then the infrastructure is invested in once, and then you get the benefits as you roll out your company to all of these different markets and different locations.
That point on sub offices, I think, is fascinating because it's something that you come across quite a lot in terms of marketing emails. Certainly, ones that we see coming in, where you will have an address in, we'll say Carlow, but also one in Johannesburg or something like that as well. What kind of demand are you seeing for these sort of sub offices?
It's growing. It's definitely growing, and it depends on the industry as well, and it depends on what the space is, but it's definitely growing. And we've, there are, let's say, there are technical challenges that we face when somebody says, "Oh, I want to open an office." Actually, South Africa is a good example because we have an IP Telecom South Africa actually that was set up a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic, as a sort of a standalone sister company that works with us. But and because there are limits in the speed of light and how long it takes a signal to travel around the world, that if I make a phone call from South Africa and it has to come to Dublin and then go back to South Africa, that introduces too much latency on the link, and so you get this call degradation. So we need to have infrastructure available in locations around the world, even though it may all be managed here centrally from Ireland, to give you the quality of service that you need. So we see a company, and the first company that comes to us and says, "I want to be in, I don't know, outer Mongolia." It's like, okay, well, maybe we'll just wing something. But if all of a sudden we see that there's 10 or 20 people wanting to set up out in Mongolia, well, then we go, we need to get some infrastructure closer to them, because otherwise they'll look at it and go, the quality is rubbish. I can't be working on that. So there are technical challenges that we face, but it's definitely becoming more of a thing where you're putting your agents and you're putting your staff, and sometimes it's, you have the reverse of that, where you say, let's pretend we're in Germany and we pretend we're in Spain and pretend we're in Italy and present all these Italian and German phone numbers, but then everybody's answering them in Dublin or everybody's answering them in wherever they are. So you kind of get it both ways, where you're kind of one projecting into a remote place, but you're actually central, or you're actually setting up satellite offices and then pulling service from center out to the edges. And we need to be able to facilitate both, and definitely the days of, let's have a 10-story building and everybody's in the one place, it's not the thing that we're seeing at all.
That point that you touch across there on being reliant on infrastructure in different countries, let's stick with the example of Mongolia because it sounds very exotic. In terms of looking,
we don't have anybody
markets,
in Mongolia, but just it'd be cool. I'm happy to go there on a trip if anybody needs to set up there.
Have you looked at different spaces and gone, do you know what, just the broadband connectivity isn't there to make a cloud service work for us for the moment?
No. And I guess we're lucky in that as a telecoms company, so everywhere these days has good connectivity in their core networks in their countries. You can get gigabit connectivity into a data center in pretty much any country in the world, and it's connected at reasonably good speed to the internet backbone. Where you have lots of problems is in that last mile, or that sort of to the end user who might want to be using your service. But because we're a phone company, our bandwidth requirements are actually reasonably low. I mean, it's of the order of hundreds of kilobits per second to get an audio channel working, where if you're talking streaming video, things like that, you're into the megabits per second. So We don't have the sort of the bigger problem that somebody like a Netflix or a YouTube or whatever would have, where everything stutters and everybody down rates to 360 like level resolution and all that kind of stuff. Because audio is, in the grand scheme of it, reasonably small, it allows us to get into places where otherwise wouldn't necessarily work. And again, because the traffic on the grand scale of the internet is reasonably small, we don't have to go right into any particular location. So we service all of Europe from Dublin. The round trip time to anywhere in Europe and even East Coast North America is basically non-perceptible to the human. It is the challenge if you have to go all the way to South Africa. It's 200 odd milliseconds round trip. If you want to go to Australia, it's 350, 400. So at that point, you're saying, I need infrastructure in sort of the four corners of the globe, but you don't need to have a point in every location. Definitely not at the well. I mean, I guess, and then there comes a scale issue of, well, actually, we now have so many customers in a particular location, it's worth putting in something. But at the moment, as long as we have, a couple of points where we can get somebody to that's under the sort of couple of hundred milliseconds, then it all works fine.
Let's look at the issue of standards and devices, because if you join a certain company, you're going to expect a certain level of support, of equipment, etc. How are you finding this to be a problem? Are you finding still an awful lot of diffusion of, even looking towards BYOD or shadow IT, where, okay, somebody has a phone that will do the job, or are companies becoming more and more standardized and going, actually, look, you work for us, here is the phone that we want you to have, and it's locked down and it's got specific features, etc.
It's a bit of both, definitely. As a company, we're open. We're based on open source products. We adhere to the open internet standards for doing internet telephony. So we're agnostic as to what devices people want to use. If they want to, write their own code and homebrew their entire phone infrastructure, fine. If they want to go out and buy a Cisco or a Yealink or whatever physical device, brilliant, it'll work perfectly with us. If they want to use already existing soft phones like Bria or Zoiper, or as more and more is growing, the telephony features within Microsoft Teams, we'll support that too. So from our point of view, we're kind of agnostic as to what happens. And if you already invested in 200 Cisco phones and then you decide you're going to change provider, we're open to, as long as the firmware hasn't been locked by your previous provider, just bring them with you, and we'll work to configure them. Obviously, if they're ancient, we might suggest you might get new ones because you'll miss out on features. But we're very much of the ethos of reusability and open and standards. We definitely see a big push towards Microsoft Teams at the moment as sort of the standardization, because everybody already has Office 365 or whatever they've changed it to recently. That everybody already has Word and Excel, and Teams is sort of bundled in with that. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, if we just do a little bit extra, then all of a sudden we can get our telephony within Teams, and you get your dial pad within Teams, and your phone calls arrive into Teams. And then all of a sudden you can get away, you can get rid of all the desk phones that are taking up space on people's desks. You can then give them the flexibility of, well, just bring your laptop with you and you have Teams everywhere, and you can put on your headset and you can be in Starbucks, you can be in, on your holidays. Well, please don't phone your staff when they're on holidays, but if you're away traveling somewhere, you can be connected no matter where you are. So it gives you that great flexibility. And so we as a company, though, we don't care. We're open to anybody, because we definitely adhere to the standard SIP protocols and things like that.
Great, thanks so much, Dermot. And of course, Dermot will be back with us later on for the Q&A portion of the session, which leads us into our second poll of the morning. Sean, if you're ready to deploy it, we are asking, which of the following would be your biggest concern in choosing a service provider? Is it coverage, cost, features and integrations, or speed of implementation? So we'll just leave that up there for a few seconds. Okay, if you want to close that off, let's have a look at our results. So 13, 13. Plenty of food for thought there later on. Personally, I would have gone for some very conservative answers, so it's wonderful to see a spread of opinions on this. We are now joined by Adrian Ward, IT Support Manager for Portwest. Portwest is a manufacturer of workwear, safety wear, and PPE with a global force of 5,100 people. The company operates 4 factories in Bangladesh, Myanmar, Italy, and Albania, and warehouses in 8 global locations in the UK, USA, Australia, UAE, Ireland, again, Italy, Spain, and Poland, with customer service staff in 130 companies in 130 countries. Adrian, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I gave a very brief segue into the scale of the company, but just tell us a little bit more about Portwest and the size of the team you deal with.
Yeah, so basically, as you mentioned there, we have a global presence. So in several countries around the world, 130 countries with sales staff in them. So our headquarters is in Westport in County Mayo, and we've over 130 staff there that service the core functions of the business. So the likes of marketing, compliance, finance, supply chain, development, IT, procurement, you name it, the usual core functions of a business. So basically, we also in the last year have set up a service center in Bangladesh, which complements our HQ. So it also provides support to the for the core functionality of the business. So we're basically we're a global company. So it's basically so obviously telecoms is a vital part of the jigsaw, I suppose, really, around that. So in HQ, we've got a team of 8 people on the support side of things. So we look after everything that comes under the telecoms window, if you like, everything from the support of the actual desk phones, the user support, the call flows, the devices, etc. So we look after all of that from Westport for every site that we have the cloud PBX rolled out to. So basically, I suppose just in terms of the journey that we've had, I suppose, over the last number of years, I suppose in 2014 we had an on-premise PBX, and it just wasn't fit for purpose. We were experiencing a rapid growth, I suppose, in the business, not just in Ireland but globally, and it just wasn't fit for purpose. So we need to find a solution, I suppose, that worked to keep pace with the global expansion and so on. So we did some research and we reached out to IP Telecom. So basically, we did a number of site visits and an in-depth review into the requirements for the business. And IP Telecom became our telecoms partner of choice, and that was back in 2014. So I suppose then, back then, when we rolled out, we moved or we migrated HQ to the cloud PBX. Firstly, we used well, at the time, I think what we did was we rolled out a survey actually to our HQ staff and basically gave them the choice. IP Telecom's offering at the time where you could either have a desk phone or a soft phone. And back in 2014, I suppose, you know, everybody probably were more familiar with the desk phone. So the survey, I think, was something like 80-20 in favor of people wanting desk phone. So they got what they wanted at the time. And then over the course, I suppose, of the bed and down period, the next couple of months or so, some people went back to a desk phone and some people went to a soft phone for various reasons. As you know, each person had their own reason, but we gave them that choice. And of course, at the time, I suppose hybrid and everything else wasn't a factor in decision. So everybody was based in the office at that time. So I suppose then really after that, then we migrated our other sites. We went to the UK, 2 sites in the UK. We went to Poland. We went out to the US and we migrated Australia. So we've got all of those sites currently configured under the cloud PBX, and it's all remotely managed from Westport and with the support team there. So I suppose fast forward on then, I suppose, to when COVID hit, I suppose, really, we were probably in a very fortunate situation, I suppose, in the sense that we had everything we needed. Now, not everybody was using a soft phone at the time, of course, but we had the resources there to make that happen. So I think looking back on it now, I think myself and a colleague, when lockdown happened, I think on the Friday evening, we were told not to come back to the office on the Monday. Myself and a colleague spent the weekend just basically assigning licenses and configuring licenses and so on, and deploying them to the staff, and basically getting everybody up and running. And by Monday, everybody was in the fortunate situation that they could actually take all their voice calls from their device. So it was probably pain free, or that was one of the parts, I suppose, that, you know, we were probably in a very fortunate situation back then, in that, you know, it basically, there wasn't too much effort from our part to facilitate people being able to work from home. We also had Office 365, or a Microsoft house, and so we had Office 365. So they had SharePoint, and they had their OneDrive, and our ERP system was in the cloud. So we were in a fantastic position to allow people to be able to work from home. So that's kind of, I suppose, where we came from. Fast forward, I suppose, to the present day, I suppose, really. We have staff are back in the office. What we've done is we've rolled out 2 policies, I suppose, since people have returned to the office. There's 2 policies. One is a hybrid policy, so basically staff can work from home for up to 2 days of the week. So you can work 1 or 2 days from remotely from home, or you can work. Or you can, and the second policy then was basically a work from anywhere policy. So for a set number of weeks in the year, you could work basically anywhere around the world, and basically, I suppose, that was a massive thing for us to be able to offer staff, I suppose, really. So basically, what we found, I suppose, that it has a massive impact. You know, it has a massive positive impact on staff retention. You know, all the usual that Dermot has referred to there earlier. It basically promotes a healthier work-life balance, and, you know, everybody, it's a win-win situation. Both the employer and the employee reap the benefit. So I think this was a massive thing for Portwest to be in a position to be able to do. I suppose the other thing that I suppose the fact that we were able to facilitate the working from home is that we can attract, you know, if we're looking for specific skill sets that mightn't necessarily be available in Ireland, I suppose really we're able to, you know, we can recruit from overseas, and they can be based overseas. You know, we're you know, in particular situations, if there are specific things we just cannot get, and we're able to offer these guys contracts and basically and allow them to be every bit as connected from wherever, be it, you know, Spain or Italy or wherever it is, and it's the same as if they were in the office. They have absolutely everything that the office-based person would have. So that's another, I suppose, another massive plus for where we're at the moment now. So then, I suppose, on the journey, I suppose, really. So yeah, just going back to, I suppose, in terms of how people work currently, there's a mix of desk phones. There's a mix of the actual, that we have the soft phone on PC. We have it on laptop. We have it on mobile device. So it's basically, I suppose, the devices Dermot mentioned is irrelevant, really. You bring your device with you, and away you go. I mean, I'm working out of the UK this week, and I didn't have to do absolutely anything before I made this trip. It's basically it just works, I suppose. Really, it's the positive for us, and we have, you know, we'll say from our point of view in terms of HQ, we would have staff that would travel, to all our other sites on a daily basis. Now that COVID has I suppose partly gone away anyway, and there's a lot of travel between the different countries, but people just get on with it. They don't have to be contacting IT to say, can you do this, can you do that? It just works. So I suppose that's the another positive there. Just in, I suppose, the other services we use, I suppose, really, we've got a call center solution basically from IP Telecom as well, and Dermot has referred to there earlier on. So basically, we've got customer sales staff in over 130 countries, but we've also got sales queues that basically, so we have international sales numbers, and we have staff that service those sales queues in the local language. So Dermot referred to that earlier on. So your German sales number is answered by German speaking staff and so on, and it's very clearly visible where the call originates from. And if we need to bounce calls around, you can see that the call originated from Germany, and if we need to, in terms of staffing levels, we can basically prepend the where the call originated from. So somebody maybe that has two languages, for example, they're able to answer the call in the language where the call originated from. So there's absolutely brilliant flexibility there around that. So as part of that, then I suppose what we use in Portwest, we've got we've a stat center. So basically what that does is basically it monitors its analytics regarding the volumes of calls and so on. So we can basically we can monitor, in terms of the call volumes, the length of time people are on calls, all of that sort of stuff. And that was particularly helpful, I suppose, in COVID times, because what we could see with the analytics was, I suppose, what was the impact of COVID in a particular country, for example, on the volume of sales calls, and how I suppose the staffing levels we needed to service those particular queues. So that was that gave us a great insight, really, I suppose, into what was going on in real time. So that's kind of, I suppose, where we're at there. What we have done, I suppose, in more recent times, we've moved, we've added another, I suppose, both to the thing in terms of we've introduced Dimensions, which is basically it's a cloud-based call analytics platform that plugs into the connects into the PBX, and this gives us many more features, I suppose, than above and beyond what the Stats Center gave us. So you can customize. I suppose you can customize and automate reports to line managers regarding the volumes of calls. Everything basically about you can pull any particular piece of information you need out of it in terms of a particular queue, the agents, the talk time, the abandoned rates, everything. We've got full visibility across that. But the other option that we're rolling out at the moment, it's a project one of my colleagues is working on, is basically wallboards. So what line managers can have is basically like either a large screen or a TV screen or whatever the likes. And basically what you can do is you can have the live reporting there. So say, for example, if you had a sales queue for France, for example, and you have, let's say, for example, 5 people that service that queue, or 10 people, or whatever the case might be, you can actually see in real time the volume of calls, the amount of people on the calls at a particular time. You can see basically if we can set alerts basically to say that, okay, there's basically, it will say early morning or lunchtime, to make sure that, that obviously maybe in its simplest form, that maybe people aren't taking their lunch at the same time and the queue is unattended. It'll draw alerts to that sort of stuff. So, and this is all happening in another country. So it's basically, you've got full visibility, and that's something that's absolutely massive for us. And I think it'll be an absolutely massive benefit to us, I suppose, really moving forward. And I suppose where in terms of where we're at the moment, we probably find that, as I said there's a mix between office-based phones and our desk phones, should I say, and the soft phone solution. So at the moment we're using, we've got a mix between the Bria the Bria soft phone solution, and as Dermot mentioned earlier on there, the Microsoft Teams. So at the moment, what we're doing is, I suppose, with the introduction of the new policies around the work from home and the work from anywhere, we're basically, what we're finding is that people are using their desk phones less and less, because obviously they don't have their desk phone at home. So they've basically, we find that they're using the soft phone, they use it at home, and then they just continue to use it in the office, even though the phone beside them can ring as well. They don't, they say, what is that thing beside me there anymore? You know, it's just, it doesn't, they're I suppose we're just getting to the stage now where we're removing those as assets against the staff. And so what we are planning on doing over the next number of months is to just possibly look at migrating everybody into Microsoft Teams, because I suppose at the moment, you know, we do everything else through Teams. We do, you know, obviously with people working remotely and so on. Now, obviously, the likes of Microsoft Teams and Zoom and all that, you know, obviously played a significant part in keeping in touch and collaboration and all sorts. So, you know, it makes sense for us as a business to have a one-stop shop. So, you know, it basically to have your telephony coming through your Microsoft Teams, and maybe moving away from the Bria is the way forward for us. And basically that's what we're looking at now. So, you know, it's basically, you have Microsoft Teams on your laptop, you have it on your phone, you have it on your tablet, and it just works for us. It doesn't really matter, you know, the call comes through, you can, regardless of whether you're on the move, or they're at your desk, or whatever the case might be, you're connected, and you know, that's the bottom line. So I suppose it ticks an awful lot of the boxes for us, I suppose, really where we're at and where we're going in the future. So that's kind of, you know, it's the adaptability and the scalability, I suppose, and I suppose the autonomy really to be able to move forward and how we want to move is and to have that, to be able to facilitate that, I suppose, is the way for us. So kind of that's been our kind of journey, I suppose, and you know, it's come a long way in the last number of years, as I'm sure Dermot will vouch for. But it's certainly the fact that we had our cloud PBX in place prior to COVID made a massive difference for us. You know, it was one of the things that, I suppose, it was one of the things that didn't cause as many headaches as other things, I suppose, really. You know, so that's kind of where our journey has been anyway.
On sort of the topic of continuity, having such a globally distributed workforce, did you manage to implement a single COVID response, or was it, did you end up very much working on a country by country basis?
It was probably country by country, really. Or, well, say Ireland and the UK, we probably we aligned those in terms of I suppose, because they would be very similar in terms of how we operate. Then we'll say for the likes, because of course the COVID responses were different in different countries as well, in terms of timelines and stuff like that. But it followed the same form, I suppose, really, but it was just probably how we approached it in other locations were maybe slightly different. But you know, the bottom line was, our challenge was to get the licensing applied, get the actual the license configured, and get them deployed to the staff. So, you know, the end result was the same. They were still going on. It didn't matter whether they were going on a laptop, or whether they were going on a mobile, a tablet, or whatever. It didn't really matter. We weren't really concerned with it, and we had full visibility on you know, if we were setting up configuring, say, the Yeeling phones, for example, you know, we could do that all through the PBX anyway. Like, so it didn't really matter, I suppose. The end result was the same for us. So there was I have to say, there were no great challenges, you know, for us around that piece, I suppose, really.
Hey, Adrian, if you can stick around with us, we'll invite Dermot back for the Q&A. And we have one final poll for this morning. Sean, when you're ready. The question is, has hybrid working forced a rethink of the tools your business uses? A simple yes, no. So we leave that up for a few moments. Okay. And yep, a very straight 100%, which I suppose is to be expected. No great surprises there. So just to remind you all, we are accepting questions through the chat function, which of course will be moderated. So gentlemen, to look at the first two questions that we got back there, particularly from the first one, where 25% of our respondents said that since the great return to work, they have actually managed to reduce their spend. Is this a matter of people moving to different solutions, or is it sort of an audit of what people have? Dermot, what are you finding?
I guess there's a couple of different aspects of, if you think about your telecom spend, right? There's upfront cost of equipment. If you're going to kit out an office and you're going to invest, buy 500 Cisco's or Polycoms or Yealings or whatever and have them on everybody's desk, and that's a sort of one-off capital cost versus the model that then applies to when you're actually making your phone calls and you're having your service on a month-by-month basis. And then as well, if you're moving to soft phones, if you have a monthly or an annual license on those. So I'd always be a bit wary of somebody saying, "Oh, my costs have gone up or my costs have gone down," because it's like, well, last year, you kitted out a new building, so of course your telecoms costs went up last year because you bought all these toys. And then you also have the other side where, despite all of the cost of living increases and things like that, telecoms pricing, and especially for international calling, it's always on that downward trajectory. Where it used to cost you like £2 a minute to phone the US, you now can make a phone call there for like 5 cents a minute, or 2 cents a minute. Don't ask me about the sales and the marketing and the price of anything, but like it's always getting cheaper. So you kind of look in your aggregate and say, I'm probably getting the same service for less, and then you kind of say, well, if I'm saving, then I'll say, well, but now that I'm somewhat nominally saving money by calls becoming cheaper, maybe I can invest some money into the other integrations then, and to enhance the service. So my overall spend might stay the same, but I'm getting more bang for my buck, because now all of a sudden I've said, right, I want to actually make sure that my phone calls are all being logged in my CRM. So I need to be able to hook into Zendesk or into Zoho or Salesforce or one of those sort of platforms. Right, let's invest some time and effort into getting that working. So I don't know if I could really say that I would see across the industry that everybody is saving money. But definitely there are economies to be had by doing things in a sort of a smarter way, and definitely moving to soft phones and getting rid of physicals gets rid of at least that capital part out of your every 4 or 5 years refreshing all the equipment in your organization.
Adrian, how have you found your bottom line on this? A massive project and then sort of a kind of a downswing as people get used to it. Did you find it a particularly cost-effective transition?
Yeah, I think because as Dermot mentioned there, I suppose we're not investing in the hardware, I suppose, anymore. To a certain degree, obviously there are still some people that require and probably some people that will always want to use desk phones, but that initial investment in hardware probably isn't where it was, I suppose, a number of years ago. People want, they want the flexibility now to be able to be on the move. So it's I think that part of it has certainly gone down. In terms of the licensing, I think the fact that we already have the likes of Microsoft Teams in place, it's just basically the licensing costs that are associated with it now. And I think probably we will find, fast forward 12 months, we'll probably have fewer and fewer people using anything other than Teams. I think that's, for us as a company, I think that's the route, that's the way forward for us. So, and I think that, obviously, the investment that, in terms of all the hardware won't be what it was, like, and obviously the fact that you're not maintaining a PBX on site as well, it's in the cloud. So that's I think that's certainly a good saving on in that aspect.
Yeah, so that was the one thing that I was going to say. Yeah, if you have a big Mitel or something down in the basement of your building, the support costs on that on an annual basis are actually quite large. And as your machine gets older, your physical on-prem PBX gets older, and it gets harder and harder to source parts. The support contracts on those get very much more expensive. So there's a large saving of moving to the cloud, get rid of all of that sort of legacy support of legacy infrastructure, and then you can spend it on the stuff that you want to actually be able to do, rather than I just have to keep paying more and more money to keep the basics of the functionality operational.
Yeah.
A question from the floor here. Are systems secure for businesses who handle card payments and other sensitive data? Dermot, if you want to start with that.
Yes, I suppose the very short answer. We have the traffic is all, we have encrypted traffic between all of our different locations, things like that, and then we have services set up with depending on how you're doing your processing, I suppose, is the question. If you're literally you have a card terminal, or you have a Stripe web page open on your agents, and they're taking the credit cards over the phone and they're just typing them in, well, that's as secure as it can be, in terms of you're passing that information to an agent, but that's what you would be doing anyway. But we also have situations put in place with actual card processing providers, where we can route the call, say, right, I'm going to take your credit card now, and then you pass it directly to them, and then it's off our platform. The call is the credit card details are captured in the payment processor and then come back to us, and so we as the operator don't see or hear any of the sort of information that's there. So it depends on who your payment providers are and what way you're set up, but the short answer is yeah, we're grand.
Adrian, if you'd like to chime in on that.
Yeah, I suppose it's I suppose Dermot would have explained it as better than I could anyway, but we wouldn't have any concerns around that side of things, to be honest, Niall.
Time is getting a little bit short, so we're keeping an eye on the Q&A. Just from our second poll there, when we asked which of the following would be the biggest concerns in choosing a service provider, it was very refreshing actually to see 63% of respondents coming down on the side of features and integrations. Dermot, you operate on sort of an open platform, if you will. So are you finding, again, people are coming to you with, okay, some of us are using Soho, some of us are on Microsoft. It's very much a distinct selling point for you guys.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's becoming bigger. I mean, I guess, once the pandemic hit and people had to start thinking of new ways of doing their business, how they hook all these systems together and how they plug the telephony into it has become a big issue. And I mean, it's not just us. I mean, let's be honest, a lot of other telecoms providers are doing similar things. But I think where we definitely like what we're very proud of is the fact that we have that openness, that of your data, we're just facilitating your telephony. It's not our product, it's you're using this to enhance your business, and so we don't allow you, I mean, it's just there. All of that information is there for you to plug it into whatever systems you want. And I mean, we have a development team. It's not a huge development team, but and so we've targeted specific interactions with Soho, with Salesforce, Zendesk, and a few others. But if you come to us and you say, I'm working with product X and I really want it to be integrated, we're open to having that conversation. And either, if a lot of people start coming to us saying, oh, X is the latest, greatest thing, then we'll jump on it. If it's a one-off, we'll certainly help if you have a development team who are working on that, or you've got some integrators that you're working with, we're always happy to talk shop with anybody who wants to enhance them. And it's great to see that people aren't just looking at cost and saying, I want the cheapest phone service. There is more to your phone service than just how much you're paying for it. It's also what you're getting out of it.
Last question, I think, for this morning has come in from the floor. Is this something that suits small businesses or just large corporates? Dermot, if you'd like to talk to the issue of scale there.
We have customers who are at the 1 and 2 person offices, sole traders and that kind of thing, all the way through to people like Adrian who have thousands and thousands of people. There's and as I said, the more advanced features are probably more targeted towards the bigger users because they'll get the most return from their investment and time into it. But our platform and our services open to anybody. I mean, we're a business to business company, so we don't have any residential, so can't help you there. But after that, once you're a business, it'll operate from 1 or 2 people companies through to our biggest people. I mean, Adrian is definitely one of our biggest customers, and certainly the global footprint. I don't think anybody else matches what he has. But we're very happy to have Adrian and his team using us.
Likewise, Dermot.
The mutual backslapping can commence.
Exactly.
like a LinkedIn post. Very good. Thank you so much, Dermot and Adrian, for being with us. You're free to switch off your cameras should you wish. And that's it for TechFire in association with IP Telecom this morning. Thank you all for your time and input, both to our speakers and to our audience who chimed in with Q&A and on the polls as well. I invite you all to keep an eye on Tech Central for rolling news, daily updates and newsletters, and of course the Tech Radio podcast. Thanks everyone for your time, and we'll see you soon.